Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first joint department heads for the year. Welcoming our new board members to our quarterly department heads meetings. I know that they'll find it as interesting as we always do, so I'd like to introduce yourself for those that you don't know.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Newman. Krista McNamara.
David Martin.
And we're the old people. Two people need to go out of order today. We're going to start with Allie from Human Service. She's got a meeting to go to. And if Jen's here, she'll go second.
Okay, bear with me 1 second. Let me just pull up
Good morning.
this report.
Just wanted to take a moment to thank the community for all their generosity of, once again, the holiday seasons. We were overwhelmed, as usual, and many of you in this room, thank you very much. We had 51 families that we were adopted solely through donations and 52 seniors, so we made some very happy residents.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think people really enjoy knowing the opportunities to give.
Yeah,
So-
everyone. Most people come back and they want to participate every year, so it's great.
I'm very impressed by the work you did on the Medicare open enrollment and the amount of money that you were able to save.
We were
some of our
excited
folks.
about that
It's
too.
really
I
terrific.
think that's an all-time record. It was 20,000 and change, so that was pretty amazing.
Was most of that, I noticed that there was a really big number for the prescription drug costs. Is most of that just identifying their actual drugs, plugging them in the formulary to figure out which plan works better?
Yep, that's exactly what it is. During that time, from October 15th through December 7th every year is when people can review their Medicare Part D plans. And so that money is from when we've switched someone from one plan to another. So we helped 69 people, and not everyone changed, but of the ones we changed, we saved $20,000.
Wow, it's terrific.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's great.
But
Thanks.
a little bit sad to see that you had an all-time high in number of new clients in the quarter.
Yeah.
And, I think we know inherently why that happens, but can you articulate in your eyes what some of the challenges are that are impacting?
Well, it
More
seems like,
clients.
in looking at last year's quarter, the same similar time, was also a record-breaking. So now we're about 6 people, or 6 clients more, which is 6 households, so it could be families or whatnot. I don't really know what's happening. I think we do have a lot more families that maybe the husband's lost their job and now mom hasn't worked in quite a few years and trying to get them back into the workforce, which is why we have that one program, Women Returning to the Workforce, and we're going to continue that. So we've seen an increase in families with that dynamic, and it's very challenging when moms haven't been working for a long time. Usually it's moms, not always, but primarily.
So primary breadwinner losing their job.
Right, and being middle-aged and having a hard time getting back into the workforce.
Okay. Any other questions for Allie?
No, thank you.
Ally, in the first paragraph, CAAWC,
Oh, I didn't put sorry,
That's okay.
Connecticut, wait,
or just a little bit what that is.
Central Action Agency of Western Connecticut. It's a Community Action Agency of Western Connecticut. It's the agency that processes our energy assistance applications, and they also help low-income families and residents in the area. We don't particularly refer to them. We help our residents ourselves, but that's the agency that is contacted by DSS, the Department of Social Services, for those applications.
Okay, great, thank you.
I was particularly glad to see that you coordinated with the tax office and did the mailing out to all the residents to make sure that they were at least aware of programs they might be eligible for.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the first year we did it. The assessor's office gave us their list of people who participate in their programs, so we reached out and we got quite a handful of people, and we'll continue to do that each year.
Great.
That were able to participate in programs they didn't know they were eligible for. So,
Thank you, Allie.
thank you.
Okay, Jen didn't walk in, did she?
I don't see it.
Okay, all right, we'll move on then. Assessor, Tony, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
My report pretty much speaks for itself, highlighted with the activity that we've received over the past year from the building department and the town planner. So we'll be finishing up the total grand list by the end of the month. And I guess other than that, the other observation I make is that between February 1st and May 15th, we'll be accepting applications for property homeowners whose income is under $54,000 for a married couple, $54,100, and $46,000 for the tax relief homeowners program. We have just less than 100 households that are on that program. So we every 2 or 3 years we work with the Register of Voters. We try to get their list for people that are over 65, and we try to offer that to the public. That includes their adjusted gross income and the copy of the 1099 Social Security statement. And other than that, like I said, the report speaks for itself.
Tony, can you talk to us about unpriced cars?
Of the 17 or 18,000 vehicles we have, about 10% come in unpriced.
What does that mean?
Well, the 17-digit VIN number might be unclear, or it might be a brand new registration. It might be a motorhome. It might be a motorcycle. Most of the motorcycles aren't priced because there's a limited amount of data on the $3 million database, 3 million vehicles that are on the state motor vehicle list. So traditionally they come in unpriced, and we have to cross-reference that 4th, 5th, 6th digit and identify it through the NADA book values and annually update those values based on market value.
All right, so you use what data is available to you to
Variety data.
apply some kind of an assessment.
We have trade journals as well
Great.
as going online and seeing what these specialty cars might be worth within a 102-mile radius.
Okay, thank you.
Would you be comfortable giving us sort of a preview as to expectations for the grand list?
Not today, tomorrow I will.
Okay, fantastic.
Going back on the tax relief program you just mentioned, is that exclusive to that age group, or is there another option for those who are under 65 but who fall in the same income?
Got to be over 65 or over.
So there's no relief for those
No.
under? Okay.
Anything else for Tony?
Last question I had
Yeah.
is, where do we stand, just roughly, the number of appeals pending today versus the last time we did reval? Just roughly.
We average anywhere from 12 to 20 a year or two after reval that carry over through the reval. During the 08 revaluation, I think we had close to 75 court cases.
Yeah.
It was a different temperament, a whole different
Yeah,
type of
yeah.
economy anyway on it. So we're attending to most of those, working closely with the town attorney. I think we have less than 20.
Less than 20,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you. Okay, I see that Jen came in. Jen, are you okay with coverage, or would you like to go next?
I would like to go next. if
Perfect.
possible.
Yep.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just a couple highlights from my report. We finished the fiscal 19 audit. You should have received your copies a couple of weeks ago. Everything went very well. The audit committee just had their wrap-up call last week. No issues or anything of significance to report out of that, but we will be doing an audit RFP, possibly changing auditors, but we're going to also encourage Bloom Shapiro to submit a proposal with the idea that they would change partners, so we have a new partner on the engagement. For the next few months, our main focus is going to be on budget. You'll be receiving Kate's budget in a couple weeks, and then we'll work through the process of your review, Board of Finance review, and the RTM approval. Any questions?
Do you ask for RFP every year for your audit services?
No, best practice is about 5 years.
3 or 5 years?
So Bloom Shapiro's done 5 audits for us, so we're looking to,
So it's a routine thing?
yes.
Okay. They would change partners in any of them if they continued?
Right, they did change partners after their first 3 years. Now we've had the current partner for 2 engagements.
Okay.
But we'd like them to change again if they were to get the contract.
Jen, when you mentioned the budgeted collection rate, is that already net of the 25 basis points, the way that we
Yes.
typically do it? And the budget, so the actual collection rate was
Was
higher?
25 higher.
Was definitely higher. And I noticed that the fund balance, even post bond prepayment, was still well above the Board of Finance's target. Do we have you guys talked about plans or expectations for that?
It's on their radar. They are definitely keeping an eye on what the fund balance is and potential uses for it. Per their policy, it's to be used for one-time purposes. So I'm sure it will be discussed during their budget review.
So one-time purposes would be for like capital projects and
A
things like
one-time
that?
capital project, the redemption of the bonds, something like that. They don't want to use it to support ongoing expenses.
Okay, thanks.
Could they use it to fund the kinds of reserves that we fund every year in the budget if they wanted to? You know, if we were putting money into, like, vehicle replacement reserves?
Rather than do that, my recommendation would be to continue to budget the reserves so that those remain constant, we don't get the volatility in the budget. But if there were other items recommended in the capital program that they would choose to fund through a fund balance appropriation, we did that with $500,000 in the last budget cycle. Rather than tax for it, they drew down fund balance and funded those.
Perfect. Okay. And I appreciate your performance measures, Jen. Really see how you're working to make your office more efficient.
Thank you.
And showing us in dollars and percentages how that's happening.
Any management comments?
None.
Congratulations.
I think that's like the third year in a row.
Yeah, that's awesome.
None?
None.
None?
No management letter again.
Yeah,
Come
that's a
on.
great thing.
The
I know.
management letter does serve its purpose sometimes.
It does. A question on the page 6, which is your contingency accounts and unassigned fund balance. Do I read that the unassigned fund balance does not include the other funds that are listed on the page?
Correct. This is, the other funds listed on that page can be accessed through Board of Finance action. The unassigned fund balance does not include those. This is the accumulated balance through 6/30/19 that would be appropriated through a special appropriation.
Okay, so those are, add them all together, that's what we have as reserves. Got it.
Anything else for Jen?
I did have a, Jen, can you talk briefly about Tyler Content Manager? You referenced it a couple of times, but just,
It's something we've been wanting to do. The Board of Ed has implemented it. It's like an electronic filing cabinet. So if anyone clicks on a transaction in our financial system, they'll be able to see the attachments that support it. A purchase order, if someone were to attach a copy of their quote or a copy of the contract, you'll see a copy of the invoice when it's paid, a copy of the check that paid that invoice. But that has been delayed because as we started working on it, we were told that we need to migrate the platform that our forms are on before we can move forward with the Tyler Content Manager implementation. And the Board of Ed and the town are on the same munis contract, but different databases. And so when we do upgrades or a transition like this, we have to do them together. We cannot do one at a time. So we're working with them. They have to review their forms still. Once we both have them reviewed, we can move forward.
do you have a ETA on that, at least from them, or?
No, they have it on their list. The proofs were due back about a month ago. We sent our comments back, but they have not yet completed their first proof.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jen. Great, thanks. Okay, we'll go back up to buildings. Pete?
Morning. As you can see, commercial construction was way down this last quarter, but I think you'll see that soon to get rectified with the new projects coming on board. If you went down to Roten Avenue this morning, you'll notice that the 169, the two buildings were coming down as we speak. That's part of the Federal Realty project. They also just received last week their drainage permit, which is $3 million worth of work that they have to start prepping for before they start building the buildings. And I just received the plans from zoning last week for the Walgreens portion of the Federal Realty project. So all that's going to start kicking in very soon.
It's exciting news.
Besides that, I don't really have anything else to add to our report.
Any other questions for Pete? No, we know you'll be busy. Thank you, Pete.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. EMS, is Joe here this morning? Oh, there you are. Morning, Joe.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Thank you, you too.
Just some highlights from the report. We finished the calendar year 2019 with 1,599 total EMS responses, and down a little bit from last year. and that's always a good thing. Paramedic responses, 135 in the fourth quarter, which was up a little bit from the previous year's same quarter. We are watching response times, obviously, with the relocation, and they are up almost 3 minutes, actually over 3 minutes,
Yep.
from the daytime response.
And that's
So,
simply from being a
I
couple
think
of
it's
blocks
simply
down
from
the
being
road?
relocated out from where they were.
Interesting.
So, because when you compare it to last year, it's still over 2 minutes from what it was in the same quarter of 2018.
Yep.
Every time I drive down the post road, it looks getting a little closer to completion, so we'll cross our fingers that they get back soon.
Have you had any conversations with the folks at the Housing Authority?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
No updates provided as of yet.
Okay.
I'll
For the new members,
Yeah.
you might remember that we had to locate our paramedics out of the property that we own at 701 Post Road because it's part of the complex where they're redeveloping the Royal. And the Darien Fire Department was generous enough to allow us to have the paramedics be hosted in their fire department.
During the day.
During the day. So, it's, I guess, caused some minor delays in response.
Some delays, but, the responses, we haven't had any major issues, and paramedics are still arriving within the standard national benchmark for paramedic arrival, so we're meeting the need.
Good.
Our membership stands strong at 151. The fourth quarter is always our busiest time for medical coverage standbys, especially with the high school football season. So you can see that our coverage there for the football games. Hockey season starts as well. We provide an ambulance at all of the hockey events down at the Ice House. So we have those. Participated in 2 events, the Hindley School Family Fun Day and the Tokenie Pumpkin Fair. Provided a lot of continuing education for our members, which is listed there, and trained 54 people last quarter in first aid and CPR training in the community. Any questions?
For the newbie in the group, what are the hours for the first, second, and third response shift?
So the first response is a 911 comes in. A 911 call comes in when all of our ambulances are available. So it's the first ambulance that takes that call. The second response is if there's already a call going in town, then our second ambulance will respond. That ambulance is a call-in ambulance. So the minute that there's a call in town, that crew will come in. And then the third response is when there's 2 911 calls going on in town, and the third one comes in.
All right, great. I misunderstood
Nope.
that when I read that.
Any other questions for Joe?
Thank you for all your help.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
have
Oh, go ahead.
one last
sure.
question. For the community trainings that you guys do,
Yes.
is there a calendar for those somewhere, or how do those get publicized?
So generally what happens is an organization or group or somebody will call and say, I'm interested in this type of training, and we'll arrange it for them. On occasion, we'll have a Saturday class that we'll promote to the public. It'll go out on social media, the Darien patch and things like that.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, emergency management, Mark. Morning.
I just want to bring to your attention that we're at the initial stages of planning for our at-risk population in town. Human Services alongside the police department, and also we're hoping for some people with special needs that may want to include in our group to plan for our town and the citizens that may need special assistance in emergencies. Other than that, I have nothing further to add.
Can you tell us a little bit more about, under your exercises and activities, the project with the police on pre-planning town facilities and schools? What exactly does that mean?
In an event there's an emergency in a town building or school, we have basically worked out with the police department on where we would put our incident command team, put our staging of fire apparatus or other police units, et cetera. So it just shortens the amount of time in an emergency where people would need to think about all the elements of that emergency. So and I hate to use the word, it's for other reasons these days, but emergencies seem to be broadening what's going on in this country.
Okay. That's excellent. And the grant cycle, when you wrote this report, it said the deadline of November 26th. Did we meet that deadline?
We did. Unfortunately, the circumstances, that particular grant is a Connecticut grant, and then there's a grant that's also a federal grant. They're the same circumstances. They allow for elevations and also acquiring property. However, the benefit cost analysis for FEMA must meet a certain threshold, and we can't get those numbers to work. So it really keeps getting just pushed down the road, so to speak. So every time there's a grant cycle, we reapply. It's not beneficial to the homeowner, but it's, with the property values in town, it's very difficult to make the numbers work.
Yep. You guys, I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a home on Crimmins Road that repeatedly floods. So Mark has tried innumerable grant opportunities to find funds to either elevate or purchase that house in the same way that the town assisted the folks on Cherry Street. And so it's been unfortunate that we can't find any money for relief. Yep.
We keep trying.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, you have at the bottom talking about the school security plan work. Who's that?
So,
The reason I asked that, just to let you know, is that we're having a meeting on Thursday for a security group, which includes a cast of characters. I don't see your name on that list. I'm concerned.
so back when the legislature reviewed the Sandy Hook incident, they put together the law, and I don't know the law's number, but it's a public act, and it calls out for certain individuals to be involved in school planning. But the onus is on the school system to include us. So when we're invited, we get involved, and when we're not invited, there are people that are involved. So each school must have a committee, and that committee usually consists of a school resource officer. It's supposed to include the fire marshal, emergency management, a whole host of other school people, and they're to review the plans annually, and we're told they meet quarterly. So some of it we're involved in, and other aspects, some of the first responders are involved. So it has some level of the emergency responders involved. I don't know if that particular meeting is anybody from emergency management or fire marshal or the police department.
Police department, yes, but not fire marshal or emergency management.
And there's a lot of conflicts because, from a fire standpoint, we like to get people out of a building, and from a security standpoint, a lot of people want to keep the people in the building. So there can be potential conflicts in the building codes and fire codes.
So maybe when the chief and Bobby Bush come up, they can talk to us about their engagement in the school security planning process.
Thank you.
Anything else for Mark?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to Bob, Fire Marshal. Good morning.
As far as the school security planning goes, I've had very minimal involvement with them. Each of the schools selected, when they were required to do it, somebody from the fire service to represent them, and it's supposed to be at their meetings and quarterly meetings. So I haven't had feedback from what they're doing. So once a year we get their updated plan, and the last several years pretty much the updates have related to staff changing. Other than that, the plan really hasn't changed much.
So what you're saying is there are members of our volunteer fire departments
Yes.
that represent
They
the
chose
town?
to, yep.
Okay. And do we know who those individuals are?
Off the top of my head, I do not know who each of the representatives are.
Okay. Is it possible to find that out for us?
Sure.
And to make sure that, the meetings are happening and that those folks are attending the meetings? Okay. Okay. Anything else for Bob in his fire marshal's report? I had a question on the hoarding cases by fiscal year.
Yes.
Are these the same cases that have carried over?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, fine.
I had a question. The one permit fee for $65,000?
Yes.
What was that?
That was for the Walgreens building. So when they filed for their building permit, they actually broke it out into 3 permits: the drainage permit, the foundation, and then the full building. When they paid the fee to our office, they paid the entire fee that covered.
Okay.
Right. So it covered the entire building project for the Walgreens and the garage.
And the other question I had was on fire incident reporting and false alarm. It seems that, if I'm doing this right, in fiscal year '20, you had about 250 false alarms and you billed out 81.
Yes.
Is that a normal relationship?
It is. So if you look on the next page, the breakdown of types of false alarms.
Yep.
41% of them are canceled en route.
Okay,
So those are not billable. They're
obviously. Okay,
either canceled immediately upon dispatch, but it generates an incident.
yep.
And if I'm reading this pie chart correctly, 91% of the calls don't require, active firefighting, right, or response. They're either malfunctions or canceled en routes.
Correct. Well, the carbon monoxide are actually all false carbon monoxide alarms as well.
They're all false.
So these are all false.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
And the carbon monoxide is also a non-billable call because the resident or the building owner cannot detect whether or not they have carbon monoxide because it's odorless and colorless.
I think
Got
that
it.
if you go to page graph 11, the total calls for folks, that might be more.
Yep.
um,
It's a little bit, I can't read the data on this
Yeah.
report, to be honest with you, in black and white, so
Mention that.
we'll have to figure that out. Okay.
I had a question regarding fees that we've mentioned. How often do those get looked at, or?
The fee schedule was last updated in 2017. We look at it annually, and we are pretty much in line. The other town that charges the same fee for building permit, for plan review and everything, is Westport, and we're both charging $5 per $1,000 of value for the project.
Okay, what about New Canaan, or are there?
New Canaan actually has no fees, aside from blasting permits. I don't think they've changed any other fees. And the other fees that we've compared with in surrounding communities in Fairfield County, we're pretty much right in line with everybody else.
Right.
So I guess, I know it's always good to look at surrounding communities, but fees are really driven by, our operating expenses, the amount of time and effort that you and your staff put into this kind of work. So I always want to be sure that our fees are really representative of, what you're investing in providing those services rather than simply benchmarking to other towns, I would say.
I think that's a philosophical discussion you should have with the Board of Finance, because for some services, you may feel that you should cover 90% of the cost of operations. Other services you may feel are so essential that you should only cover a minor portion of the services.
Yeah, but the cost of delivering the service does go up every year because of the cost of personnel goes up every
Yep.
year, et cetera. So, perhaps being on some kind of regular schedule of fee review can help to
Yeah.
make those appropriate adjustments.
Yeah, that's
Doesn't
what
have to
I was
be
getting at.
necessarily every year, but maybe every other year would be appropriate. Okay. Any other questions for Bob? Thank you. Health. Good morning, David.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I did want to make a comment about a question that was asked earlier about a calendar. The Health Department does maintain an events calendar that have to do with community events related to public health. If we knew about training being done by EMS, it'll be on the calendar, and we often do have those things. Our nurse is in charge of maintaining the calendar. So you could find that on our website.
Great.
The only other thing I wanted to add to my report is that for some reason this year there's been a lot of public interest in the free radon test kits. We got more than we have in past years, and we've given out 3/4 of what we received. So People are interested this year.
Great.
Other than that, I'll take any questions.
I haven't seen any state health department dispatches on the coronavirus yet, but I certainly hear about it in the national news. Have you seen anything from the state?
No.
Concerns whatsoever?
No.
Okay. Let's see.
Could you just refresh us, what is the FDA code implementation all about?
I'm sorry?
What is the FDA code implementation all about?
2 years ago, the state legislature adopted and directed the state health department to implement the FDA food code, which is kind of a revamping and updating of what we currently have as our guidance for doing the work that we do when inspecting restaurants. And the state still has not managed to figure out how to get the implementation of that into effect, and the regulations to empower that and kind of tell us how to do the enforcement
Right.
part hasn't been completed yet. We were just notified that the current certifications for inspectors has been extended to December 31st of 2022. It's 3 years.
Yeah.
So they're figuring maybe sometime within the next 3 years we'll get that.
Figure it out. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of other questions. The Lone Star ticks, you say, is kind of a newcomer to Connecticut. What kind of diseases do the Lone Star ticks carry?
There's a list of them.
Okay.
I'm not prepared to give
Yep.
what they are, but one of the concerns is that unlike the deer tick that needs to be engorged for 24 hours, the Lone Star tick transmits disease rapidly. So the main message is, regardless of the numbers of diseases, is to really make sure that when you're outside in the woods or working in the garden, that you really do very comprehensive tick checks when you come back in. Make sure that you don't have ticks on you. So that's a message that I think is really important. Best protection is to make sure that you take off your clothes and take a shower when you come in.
Do Lone Star ticks transmit Lyme's disease?
They do, and
They do.
others,
Okay.
and other diseases
Yeah,
as well.
interesting.
So,
Okay.
but they're not testing the Lone Star tick.
Oh, okay.
So just consider the fact that, we do check them. We send all ticks off for testing. They don't test dog ticks because they don't transmit disease to humans. But the Lone Star ticks, they don't test because they don't have the capability of testing them. Just make sure that when you're outside that you don't have ticks on you when you come in.
And congratulations to Mindy.
I know.
For being elected president of the Connecticut Environmental Health Association. That's great news for Darien.
Yeah, thank you. I'll pass that along.
Any other questions for David? No? Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, Lori, Human Resource.
Good morning.
Morning.
It was another busy quarter in Human Resources. We had several recruitments during this quarter. A number of them were related to the town clerk's office, with Karen Diller's election to town clerk. We had her position become available, and besides Karen now, there's 3 unionized positions. So her position became available. There was an internal promotion. The second position in line became available. There was an internal promotion. So now we're left with the Assistant Town Clerk 1 position, which the recruitment for that is currently going on. So hopefully soon that office will be fully staffed. The end of this month, we're going to be having a retirement planning seminar for our employees. The first of its kind in quite a while for our employees, so there's a high level of interest in that. And we're also almost done working with Selectmen actuaries on a pension statement for our employees. So the plan is that every other year we'll be able to give them an updated pension statement. And so that should kind of coincide with our retirement planning seminar. We also, at the end of October, reached a couple of agreements with the Darien Town Hall Employees Union. Those were a couple of items that we were negotiating after the main contract was agreed upon. And those 2 items had to do with the modified work schedule for which we'll be doing a trial period this summer, and an annual performance evaluation process for the Town Hall Union. And that's the first such agreement with our unionized employees. It's been something that we've been looking forward to getting an agreement on. We also will be starting to prepare for negotiations with our Public Works Union. Their contract will be expiring June 30th. And then lastly, we just, in concert with the Finance Department, launched the Employee Self-Service, which is an online portal that our employees can get on to look up a whole variety of personnel and payroll information. And we hope to be using that for more in the future, such as possibly open enrollment with the benefits this spring. And that's it.
Yep, very good.
Any questions?
Any questions for Laura? Yes.
I did, in your first paragraph regarding personnel, I was just sort of struck when you mentioned the support specialist positions were filled through the internal promotion process. Are there two different processes or the positions posted in both places at once?
Generally, they're not posted in both places. So if it's a unionized position, and those positions in the town clerk's office happen to be in the town hall union, they're first opened to employees in the bargaining unit for a certain period of days before it's posted externally. There is a process. You still have to, even if you're in the bargaining unit, you have to apply, be screened, be interviewed for the position. But on occasion, positions are filled in that way. So we had 2 positions in the office that were filled internally with lower level town clerk office employees. So it was a promotion for them. So those 2 did not go outside. And then the more junior position, the entry level position into the town clerk's office, there were no internal applicants, so that has gone external.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori.
Just to point out, both the town hall and the public works contracts have that provision where we post it internally. Sometimes we're allowed to post them internally and externally at the same time, but the internal candidates always have to be considered first.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
They still have to be qualified.
Right.
Right, no, of course, yeah, no. Thank you.
Okay. IT. Morning, George.
How you guys doing?
We're good. How are you?
Good. Just a brief summary. Just a update to all of our servers are still going on. On top of that, a lot of the machines that are going through individually in all the departments. Still continue on that. We're always monitoring a lot of the things with the emails still. In respect to all of the, the spam and all the things that are coming in.
With regard to the replacement of computers in Town Hall, do you have a scheduled replacement, or is it on an as-needed basis?
It's not scheduled, more so that I look at people's machines.
So
that
it's
are
very individual?
Yeah, because this way, I know that certain machines are really running slow. They're not, they're really older, and they need something more required for the new machine.
Okay.
So I'll schedule them before a lot of other people. A lot of other machines are working well right now.
Do you happen to know if the Board of Education operates in a similar manner?
Yes.
Or if they have routine replacement?
Yeah, same deal.
Okay.
They work in that same, it's that refresh after a couple of years.
Okay.
That's the way it works out.
Okay. Any other questions for George?
And what are we replacing them with? When you're replacing, what are we using?
They're Acer machines. We've had Acers for the last couple of years. And with the I guess the numbers that we're purchasing throughout the school system and also in the and also here, I guess Jeff, our director, has been really good about getting a really good deal in respect to the amounts and the numbers. Okay. So it works out well.
And regarding cybersecurity and changing of passwords, do we have a policy on routinely changing of our passwords?
Yeah, I think what was also implemented again, I think they had upped, at least on the Board of Education side, I think it's 10 characters. I think they made it so it's 10. Right now here, I believe it's 6. They should update, I guess, monthly. I mean, we're trying to be good about the time period.
That's just a recommendation, though. At least on my computer, I don't get prompted to change?
No, you
that?
haven't. I've made it so it doesn't happen.
Oh, that's nice, George, thank you.
So everybody
Does
knows
that
they
happen
can
for everybody else, though?
No.
No, okay. So, that's interesting. I'd love to talk with you more about that.
Okay.
Okay.
Update your password monthly?
Pardon?
You change your password monthly?
Yes, which is, well, you
I have
should.
100 passwords. I would never.
Yes, it's not, it's really, we're
Yeah.
trying to be good about, because it can get really crazy in respect to the
Yeah.
passwords. I mean, a lot of people within the town, they have that issue. And I'm not sure if you've had to update your email password or your passwords frequently.
Well, I usually use 10
Characters.
You know, uppercase, lowercase, all that, but I've got easily 60, seriously.
Yeah, it gets
passwords.
really crazy.
It's
No,
true.
no.
And they're all different.
See, what happens again is our network person, he goes through and he just resets everything. So all of a sudden, it starts showing up again. So a lot of the times, but I think with 10 characters is really huge,
I know.
which is massive, and especially if you're changing it monthly. And if you have as many passwords as you have, it can get really crazy.
It's true. I only bring it up because small local government is one of the target areas for cybercrime.
Mhm.
And so I know you guys are working diligently
Yeah,
behind the
it's-
scenes.
Yeah, between that and then the emails and trying to fish
Mhm.
information from all of the users and just getting information from anybody off of our page. You know,
Yep.
they already know who's our selectman is or who is our
Mhm.
town, director of finance. I mean, it really gets crazy in respect to just trying to protect. We're always on top of it, but they're always trying to figure out a way to try and get more information and solicit more information from all of our users. It's difficult.
On that same topic, if we do find scenarios where there is a phishing or we know it's not the real person sending the email, is there a policy that the police department is notified? I know they
Yeah,
were
they
very
are.
helpful in the situation I found myself in, but
No, it has.
everybody is on that
Whenever
same.
there's an issue, yeah, we always kept in contact with the police department.
Great.
So they follow up in respect to a lot of the, things that need to be at least noted.
Great, yeah, so at least it's documented.
It is
somewhere.
documented.
Thank you.
And our insurance agency, Kerma, likes to know that too,
Yeah.
when those attempts happen, because they actually engage with us on, if were there to be a credible cyber incident that they get into our system, they partner with us to do the investigations. Whenever I have an email that looks unusual, I don't open it, and I send
She
it
just
right to
says-
George and said, this looks odd, let me know if I should delete it.
Yeah, and that's generally what a lot of people do. And it's
Yeah.
okay. I mean, it's just the way we live today. There's so many things that come across. Everyone relies on email and texting and all the things right now. It's difficult.
Yep.
It's hard to get past it. Tomorrow, someone else is trying to get past what we've put in place today, so.
True. Anything else for George? Okay, thank you very much, George.
Thanks, sir.
All right, Mather Center, is Beth here?
No, I don't see her.
No, Beth. Okay, Pam, Parks and Rec.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the new members.
Thank you.
I don't have anything to add, except I did receive a wonderful email and text this weekend for people cross-country skiing on Highlands.
Isn't that great?
So I thought you'd like to know that. Yeah, it was really nice.
That is great. Maybe they chased the geese away.
Didn't hear that part of it.
Who needs dogs when you have snowshoers?
But there were a few other vehicles there as well, which was nice to see that the residents are using the property.
Oh, that's
Really
fantastic.
nice.
Yep. Okay, there's always a lot going on in your department.
I had one question on your bids RFPs in February, March for security guards, garbage collection, and cleaning. Just for those three tasks, is that exclusive to Park and Rec, or is that broader for
Exclusive.
other people in the town?
Exclusive to Park and Rec.
Why would that be? Is there any cost savings if that bid was brought forth to other areas?
Because we don't have, so security guards is at the beaches.
Only.
So they're the only department
Yeah.
that does that.
Mhm.
Cleaning, we have custodians that work at the town buildings.
Right,
So
right.
we wouldn't, that's not something we would put out to bid. Garbage collection is the only one where I think we might benefit because the police have garbage collection separate. But at town hall, Public Works Department takes picks up.
I just
on
thought
her.
there's got to be some
Yeah.
way we could look at those tasks and cross.
Yeah,
And our
when-
Parks crew also provides a town savings by picking up the trash on the weekends as
Okay.
well.
We
So-
do, when there is the opportunity to bid things all together, we
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Great, okay.
Anything else for Pam? Okay, no. Thank you,
Right,
Pam.
thanks.
Thank you. Yep. Planning and zoning, Jeremy. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. The only thing I would add to my report is something that occurred last week, which is, Pete mentioned earlier, the permitting for the Federal Realty project has started. Their work is underway, and the Palmer Family Roten Heights Shopping Center, they dropped off their permits last week, so we'll start reviewing those. And I would guess that they're going to try to get their project underway. And I also spoke to David Genovese about the Corbin project, and you may have read in the paper that he is also going to be getting started probably either later in the January to March quarter or April to June quarter. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for organizing the meeting this Thursday.
Sure, I think that's the other big project that we're going to be working on over the next couple months is the land use permitting for the Oxford School. We'll be going to Architecture Review Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, Environmental Protection Commission, Planning and Zoning in the February to April timeframe.
This might be too big of a question, but I'll ask it and then we can follow up later. There is an effort from the state administration to increase population density, particularly in our cities. And I didn't know if in your circle of planners, when you talk with your fellow planners, if, for example, if you're hearing any policy direction that would impact zoning departments and zoning regulations to help facilitate that increase in density that would affect us as a satellite to the city of Stamford and Norwalk.
There has been talk for a while now, even back to the Malloy administration, with an emphasis on transit-oriented development,
Yes.
which really encourages development near train stations, to a lesser extent bus stops. But the general premise behind that is to have much higher density near the train stations, with the theory being if you live next to or across the street from a train station, there's more likelihood that you'll walk to certain places, you won't need as many cars, traffic will be down, so while you get the same, you might get population growth, the impacts of that growth would be lessened. That is the general premise. The Malloy administration were very strong advocates. I think the Lamont administration, to a lesser extent, but still advocating. I've not heard any formal technical assistance or guidance coming from the state on that. I do know it continues to be an emphasis. I hear about different things going on in other communities, but what we're seeing locally here is the three projects we just talked about, Federal Realty, Roten Heights Shopping Center, and the Corbin District, really are great examples of an increase in density near train stations and bus stops and local shopping, which would allow the folks who live in those buildings, which will be about 300 condominiums or apartments, really to have all their local services walkable, basically. So there is a likelihood that the rate of vehicle ownership will be less than other parts of town. And the fact that they'll be walking up and down the street and more likely to use local businesses, I think is built into that. So while we will see that locally, that is not going on to that extent, maybe in other communities.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Really quickly, you mentioned a grant for the Norotan Avenue, West Avenue intersection. LOPSIP, what does that stand for? Just out of
I
curiosity.
think something like Local Transportation Capital Improvement Program.
Oh, got it.
That's through Westcott.
Yep.
We did get a grant working closely with Ed from Public Works. We're hopeful that that project will get underway April timeframe and the construction will be done over the summer.
That'd be fantastic.
And that's something that's been in the planning since the redevelopment of the Heights.
Yeah, it's such a busy intersection.
Yeah. Anything else for Jeremy? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chief, good morning.
Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
Full disclosure, I have 247 hours left of wearing a beard.
I know, we were going to ask. Yeah.
I was served this week by an attorney for Joe Warren, cease and desist, because he thought I was going to muscle in on his seasonal business. Not the case, but I am true to my word, and Leukemia and Lymphoma Society made a goodly amount for me suffering through this facial hair for 30 days. So, next meeting, I will be back clean shaven once again.
Great.
Still a time of transition in the police department. Like I said last time, I was newly minted chief when I came to the meeting last. We hit the ground running very well. We're well situated with our two new captains, Bob Shredders and Jerry Marin. Just so the board knows, and anyone who might be here or watching knows, just what their roles are. Legal traffic type things that I did for years and years and years are now handled by Bob Shredders. Jerry Marin runs the Field Services Division, so things that happen in patrol or in detective division or with people mostly is Jerry Marin. Things that you don't see behind the scenes that are required to run a police department, a lot of that is Bob Shredders, who is the Administrative Services Captain. So if you get either one of those guys, if they're not the point person, they will definitely get you to the point person. Either me or those two gentlemen, you will get what you need from the police department. So we are still hitting the ground running with our new police commission and our new administrative staff. So, I have the report. Is there any questions on the report?
On the report itself, I don't have any additional questions, but I do want to ask you about your involvement or your staff involvement in school security planning.
The police department, the way I see it, we're kind of like the center fielder on an all-star outfield. We have the talent security on one side, we have school security on the other side. Well, the town they have their section of security, the school board of education has their section. We have to play the gap and we have to play those balls in the center field in the gaps. So we are engaged pretty strongly with the school, and much more so now that Dr. Adley is there. We do have a meeting coming up for school security. Selectman Coons will be there as well. I have been charged by our police commission to put a message out to the Board of Ed that we would like to have a more robust involvement with the school. So that will be coming through the superintendent's office. We are going to be making an effort to work closer together. We do the school security assessments, which are required statutorily every 2 years. We just finished those again and submitted those to the superintendent's office. They're basically updates that were done every 2 years, but things that haven't been addressed or things that have been addressed are both noted. So we do work very closely with the Board of Ed, and I envision that we're going to be working closer under the current administration. It was mentioned, I believe, when the mark was up, we do have a pre-planning action that I started back when I was a captain. Basically, I want a playbook for our school buildings and our town buildings that is going to give us the best chance of success. Everyone who watches the news, no matter which news outlet you watch, every time you see one of these incidents, you see things that do not go properly or could have been done better. I equate it to, you see a quarterback on the field too, and he's looking at the plays on his arm. He has the plays that they know what's going to be coming. Right? I like a planning action. I would have each one of my people out in the field have a book that they could open up. If we're going to the Mather Center or we're going to Tokenique School, you're going to be able to open up a book that's going to give you a lot of the detailed information that you need. Some of that is not public information of how we're going to respond, how we're going to stage, what our response is going to be. But our officers, as far as humanly possible, will be prepared for our best chance of success.
I assume that the SROs are extensively involved in those.
They are.
efforts, yeah.
If there are no other board questions on your report, then I will ask another question. I understand from our last conversation at OPC meeting that you have been asked by the Board of Education to look at student walking safety. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what they asked you to review. Could you let us know what work you're doing with the Board of Ed in terms of walking student safety?
Some of the aspect there involving school crossing guards. And in my 36 years here, we have contracted some school posts, but we have never added a school post. So some of that is looking to see if there's areas where a school guard might be practical. And talking about West and Norotan as one of those spots. We are looking in that as we speak now as to whether or not a crossing guard might be practical at that point. Now, the question is, if we staff it, do they come, or do we have a crossing guard there that no one crosses? That's what we're looking at right now. Other things that we're tasked on school walking, for example, on Hoyt Street. We put in new sidewalks on Hoyt Street. And there's some residents who believe that because of the traffic volume on Hoyt Street and the at least perceived speed of the vehicles on Hoyt Street, that even the new ADA compliant 5-foot sidewalk is not safe for people to walk on. That's a hard metric for me to measure. In my 36 years here, we have never had a roadway departure pedestrian accident where a car has jumped up onto the sidewalk and struck a pedestrian. Could it happen? It absolutely could happen at any time. But it is something that is problematic or something that we see on a regular basis. The answer is no. It's those kind of things, sidewalks and crossing intersections to get to schools.
We have several areas in town where that are more unsafe than others, and I know that not just at Norotan and West, but students crossing over the on and off ramps to I-95. You know, I'd like to ask if you're looking at that general area, if you could look at the safety of those crossings. They're the ones that concern me, quite frankly.
That is part and parcel of what we're looking at now. Again, we pull collision data history there, and we don't have a pedestrian collision history at those intersections. Not to say that they're not very busy intersections. The only thing really that could be done in those intersections is to consider putting in fully protected exclusive pedestrian phase crossings, which is impacts the traffic. You have to have a traffic engineer to say that you're not going to back up 3 intersections up or downstream when someone pushes the button to get a fully protected crossing. It's always it's a balancing act of how things are going to be done in intersections like that.
So, a couple things. I'm going to say that based on my work with the state of Connecticut, getting a fully protected crosswalk at an off-ramp will be a non-starter.
I would concur.
But the city of Stamford is just applying for an award in recognition of the signal work that they've done. And they have the countdown clocks, they have the walking man, and so as we look to make upgrades at some of those signal locations, I don't know if we're considering that, and I'm looking at Ed now. He'll be next. I'll ask him the same question.
I believe Ed will concur with me that the answer there is yes.
Okay.
And the signalization that's going in as far as these developments, we're in on the ground floor of getting every enhancement that we could get from a pedestrian and vehicle standpoint.
Great.
Same thing at Western Norotan. So yes, when there are upgrades occurring, we are ensuring that we can get the best bang for our buck on pedestrian and vehicular upgrades for intersections for safety for everyone.
Okay, perfect. Kristen?
Along the same lines, the area along Mansfield Avenue, I know we've chatted about that, less so intersection, but is there any update on more signage there from the state to slow traffic? We've seen a number of, not involving pedestrians, but vehicles intersecting with fences. And
oh yes, I'd like to talk
quite
about
a bit
that
about that ongoing. So I just don't know, is there any update on getting more signage on Mansfield to slow cars down entering the school zones?
I don't want to steal Ed's thunder, but we were out there last week with the DPW and
saw the Eversource trucks
putting in the dynamic speed signs there and on Tokenique Road 136 as well. So you should see those, depending if we don't have an ice age winter, you should see those fairly quickly. Okay. So yes, they are coming.
there seems to be a problem with the geometry of the roadway on Mansfield between Peach Hill and Mansfield Place. And I know that there's repeated accidents there, and I'm sure that you have the data on that. So, if there's something that we can do there, I'd also like to ask Ed to take a look at street lighting. There seems to be maybe an opportunity for an additional street light in that location, at least for better safety in the evening. But we'll talk to Ed next about that. Yes, Krista.
And then just back to the report, just some data issues. The motor vehicle accidents for fourth quarter, you went from 113 to 108 and went up. Is that 118?
We had 108 in quarter three, we were at 113.
I'm just look at your graphic.
Where 108's higher than 113.
Correct.
Doesn't make sense to
Yeah.
us.
I didn't actually make this graph, but yes, pictorially, it should have been below 113, yes. The data is correct.
So we're staying with what, it is 108?
108,
Is it correct?
yes.
Okay, all right. And then on the earlier reportable incidents, the cylinders, that should be fourth quarter 19, under Connecticut reportable incidents. We have
The 165.
Yes.
Q3 twice?
Yes, that should
Okay,
be-
just,
yes,
I'm
correct.
assuming, but to confirm.
Anything else for the chief?
No, thank you.
Yes.
Did you
Something
get-
else to share with us? We
did
have
you-
your JRB stuff.
Right, were there any questions on the JRB report?
No, it was helpful. Thank you very
This
much
is
for
an excellent
including it.
report. We really appreciate this, and, if this is something that you might be able to provide to us, not, certainly maybe not every quarter, but, semi-annually or annually would be very helpful. And I'm very pleased to see all of the successful completions generally.
Since the beginning of the program, there has been no recidivists come back either to
That's
JRB
great.
or
That's a good point,
or
yeah.
to, a referral.
That's terrific.
Well, question for you. Seems in April, it says the involved juvenile received a summons for an unrelated incident and was removed from the proceedings. Was that not able to complete the proceedings because other things were going on?
Right. Usually there's intake, there's discussions on whether the juvenile will stay in the program, but in the intervening time, he committed a violation that required referral to the juvenile court. It was felt best at that point that he would not go further for the previous one and the JRB.
I think this is terrific. It's a great new program in place, and I hope that the parents and the students are pleased with the opportunity that you provide.
We're doing at least as an effective job, if not better than the Superior Court juvenile matters at this point for low-level violations. I think it's been a win-win for all involved. It gives us a fair amount of reason to take care of our own folks and get our kids on the track that we want to get them on, where they're not coming back for a higher offense sometime later. It's working very well. Well-staffed, well-run, and by all accounts, a complete success.
Do all other communities have juvenile review boards?
Most do.
Most do now, okay. Wonderful. Anything else for the chief?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed, morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just two quick points, and we'll open up to questions. We did our first shutdown for the generator project this weekend, so if there are any departments that are having issues with power or anything like that in their department, now that we've gone back live again, please let me know so that we can address it and plan for it next time. Our second shutdown is scheduled right now for February 15th. It will be an all-day shutdown. We had a little confusion this weekend. One of our tenants here thought that 2 o'clock meant they could come and use the building, and we still didn't have power back up. So we had to send them back home. So next time we'll be shutting down for the entire day, so there is no confusion. And there will be a third one that'll probably be up towards the end of March. That'll be the final shutdown.
Okay.
With the snowstorm we had our first significant snowstorm, if you will, where we had more than 1.5 inches, and it didn't just turn instantly to rain. If you are driving a town car and park here on town property or leave it here on town property, when you do move it today, please do not put it back in the same spot. Give my guys an opportunity to come through here and clean spaces properly so that the entire parking lot gets cleaned. Any questions you folks may have?
Just kind of a public service announcement for anybody who's watching. There were a lot of cars slipping and people slipping and falling this weekend.
Not in Darien.
But in Darien as well. So, the first 2 inches, if I have this right, the first 2 inches of snowfall, particularly when the roadways have been cold, is very dangerous. So if you can avoid being out, let Public Works Department do their thing, get salt on the roads, start to clear the snow. That's very, very helpful. I got a lot of calls when the snow was beginning that, the roads are terrible. And yes, the roads are terrible because there's no way to avoid, we don't have heaters in the asphalt. So the snow has to fall and then be compacted a little bit for it to be safer. But Ed and his staff do a tremendous job. So people need to take personal responsibility of driving safely when it starts to snow.
Thank you for that. The only one other piece I'll add is, other than rush hour, Saturdays are the worst when snowstorm starts. Everybody is home, everybody has chores to do, everybody has places to be, soccer, basketball, whatever it may be. I think I've not seen a more busier town than Darien on a Saturday. So unfortunately, we hit the high note. But like I said, I thought we had it under control by about 4 or 5 o'clock, where the road started to slush up a little bit and the driving was a little bit safer.
Yep.
Ed, what's behind the declining solid waste deliveries?
We have, for our price to take haulers right now, is higher than them actually driving all the way to Bridgeport, which is, in my opinion, a benefit to the town.
Sure.
So they're taking it away. So basically, a lot of ours is just waste from our residents. What you'll see, though, also is the increase in recycling, and that continues to go up. And we do have currently a contract with City Carting till 2024, for which that we do gain a benefit or a revenue from that recycling. Though small as it may be, it's better than most of the towns around it who actually have to pay to have their recycling removed.
Is there any difference in our compensation for flat cardboard versus mixed stream?
No, there is not. It's a single stream, and they take it as a single stream product, one unit price.
Even if residents go through the effort to flatten and separate?
If they take it to our transfer station, there is no difference. They can take it to separate haulers that'll pay you differently because you separated it. It's not a large number, but there is a small difference.
And for the Phase 3 project on the town hall, the heating system, I've had several comments from people attending meetings in the evenings that it's ridiculously hot. Is that just the way that the pneumatic system works? And do we have to wait for Phase 3 to be the last portion of the project?
The town administrator was nice enough to allow me to finish Phase 2 about a week and a half ago.
Okay.
So we finished
It
all
wasn't
the
really
AC.
me being nice, it was like, this is unbearable.
Yep.
The pneumatic system has only gotten worse since I've been here. A lot of the bladders in the valves and a lot of the bladders in the HVAC system have just started to fail. They just don't hold the air, so what ends up happening is they shrink, and then the blowing that you get during the summertime, you'll freeze.
Right.
It'll do it in the wintertime also, because we're trying to balance the building with refreshed air and heating from the radiators. We do see us taking on that project, though, as soon as the winter is done.
Okay.
I do have a guy in here every morning going through this building to see if we can get it at least balanced before the employees come in.
Sure.
It is a struggle after the long weekends, because we do shut things down a little bit. But we're working with as best we can, and I do hear from my colleagues here if their room is hot or their room is cold, and I immediately get David over here, our HVAC guy, to do the best I can to get that up and running. I don't pick on the fire marshal in particular. He thinks I do. But this building has been difficult, so we'll continue to do the best we can, and all I ask is if they haven't experienced a heat or a cold issue in their office, don't wait till it becomes unbearable. because then it's hard for me to correct it quickly, or as best I can. So as soon as you feel a little uncomfortable, let me know.
Very well done on your staff's work on improving the conditions for our receptionist and
Yeah.
the safety component of that
Very
in
nice.
particular for her. Thank you.
You're welcome. That turned out very nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
You did a great job.
the Norotan West project, the bottom line here says construction could begin Q4 or Q1 of '21. Are we that far out?
Is that west or
It says
Ledge?
Norotan Avenue and West Avenue intersection improvements.
Then that's a typo, that'd be my fault. That should be 20.
That's-
Q1
that's what-
2020.
July.
It can't be 20, because Q1 of 20 has
No,
already
it's a
happened.
year from
So,
now.
yeah.
You meant a year from now.
It's ours, it's the town's fiscal year.
You mean
Okay.
Q4 of 20 or Q1 of 21?
Q4 20 is.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. And my last question is, if you have had any communication or involvement with the public schools on walking student safety?
I
to
have
date?
not.
Okay. So I'd like to ask if maybe we could work together with Jeremy to, and you may already have this, to create a map overlaying the school's bus policy, diameters around the 7 different schools, with a layer that shows our sidewalk inventory, if that's possible, so that we can begin to take a very targeted, hard look at the sidewalk infrastructure that matches up with the bus policy.
They are supposed to be sending me a map of their walking policy, but I haven't received that yet.
The sidewalk
But as soon as I get that, I'll share that with Ed
Well,
and Jeremy.
the walking policy is very short, and it's words, and you can actually find it, right?
Yeah, but they told, I was told at the last OPC meeting that they would have Rich Rudel send the map.
A map,
To me.
okay. Well, I think that's interesting because, like, I don't know that you can tell kids how they have to
Right.
walk to school. So
Right,
in
there's
my
no
mind,
policy there.
if kids are required to walk from, a distance of 2 miles to the Darien High School, it's our responsibility to look at the sidewalks in that 2-mile radius and determine if they're in good condition, if there's opportunities for additional sidewalks to increase safety. So that would be my objective.
Yes.
I think we have the sidewalks on GIS right now.
Perfect.
Just overlaying.
Do you have it by condition? Is there any detail that the layer tells you?
We just did a full audit and conditioning
Great.
survey this past September. And I'm working with the new highway supervisor and the foreman to start putting together a schedule to go after the most needs, if you will. Because we have some spot needs, and then we have some,
Yep.
needs where the entire block needs to be replaced. So we're working on that right now.
So I'd like to ask that if we can create this map, that the number one priority when you identify those needs, the number one priority is those sidewalks that are within the radius for walking students, if that makes sense, how I just said that.
I know what you're looking for.
Yeah, thank you.
Then to pick up on that same idea then, as we're moving into these projects, there are 3 major construction projects. Is there a way in which we can see if any road closure or equipment will be affecting those sidewalks which may be used by these 2-mile radius students?
We just
Sort of that
started,
next layer of it.
we just started discussions, and we're going to
Okay.
have actually a meeting after this one to talk with the department heads that are going to be involved with on-site and off-site impacts, to make sure that we're all talking to each other as we go forward.
Great.
That's going to be an important part of it, because there will be some work on West Avenue, and we want to make sure that doesn't impact any of the children who have to go to school. So there will be some work there that will take a long period of time to do. But in generally, the Heights area, the majority of Federal's work will be on site until they start to do their off-site work, and that's not going to happen for a little while. So we have some time to get ourselves in order.
And I'm sure that you and Jeremy are probably also talking about traffic patterns for construction vehicles, because I think that falls in the same category. And perhaps we can discuss having regular communication with the Board of Education on like a safety bulletin, when you know that certain things are going to be happening or materials are being moved that would impact the intersections on Norotan Avenue or at Hollow Tree Ridge Road, we could send bulletins so that the Board of Ed can send that message out to the student population.
That's a good item to bring up, and we'll bring that up with the developer.
Okay.
For bus routes, bus
Yeah.
delays, or even the general public, if we know that there's going to be a major.
We will do our best, and I will do my best to make sure shutdowns don't happen during the busing time of the day, without some type of detour that's approved by the police department
Right.
before we do anything like that.
A big chunk of time.
Just out of curiosity, I'm interested in learning more about the road replacement schedule. I know we've had some roads that we've had a lot of work on with the water main replacements and such, and just curious, is there like a regular schedule for all the roads to be replaced on a regular schedule? Or is it looked at on an as-needed basis, or?
Yes.
Okay.
There's more in there.
Because I don't get to, unfortunately, I send my 5-year look ahead to to all the utilities around this time of year. And what that is any road that's 20 years or older, I send that to them, letting them know there's opportunities that I may pave these roads if needed. And then I have my staff go out and evaluate them. Then the water company rolls in at the end of the year and says, hey, I'd like to do 3 roads, Birch, Gardner, and Edgerton. How do you feel about that?
So I live in Gardner, so that's what I'm.
So that will be paved.
It's a lovely condition, yeah.
That will be paved in July of this year.
Fantastic.
That was added to the list, and they do provide us a contribution. If the road is a certain age, there's a value put to the width of the road, and that's applied to the length of the road.
Thank you.
But we endeavor to replace, we have 81 miles of roadway
Yes.
every 20 years.
Yes.
So we do about 4 miles a year. This year, we'll be doing about 5.8
Yeah.
with all the construction and gas work
Yeah.
and water work that's been done.
And I know that there are certain roads that may need to get done, but not until after all the federal realty and the plumbers, like, you can't do some of that.
We've been trying to keep those in usable condition, plowable condition is the way I call it, because my guys take the brunt of that if they're not in great shape.
And then those roadways that have been opened up for natural gas,
Yes.
in our contract, we had to leave the roads unpaved so that people can make lateral connections if they want to,
yeah.
and let the
In the
trenches
meantime.
settle and then go back and pave.
And that timeline was 18 months.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So the first phase coming due this July, I'll do half of the roadways. The following July in 2021, I will do the remaining gas trenches that are out there.
And then following that, is there another schedule for another major gas line to go in town, or are we on a holding pattern for them? Am I asking a bloody question?
They're,
Smile.
yeah, they started talking about it again last month. Around the holidays is not a great time because there's no one around to do it.
Right.
But they do have a second phase that they're looking to do in certain areas of town, but they haven't actually officially rolled that out yet.
And I think they're also looking at the viability of getting gas up Mansfield to maybe serve Ox Ridge Elementary School.
We are taking a look at that. I'm pushing it a little bit to at least get a response from
Yeah.
them in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
Definitely not gonna work.
Go ahead.
Can I switch areas to the sewer department report you mentioned here? Under illicit connections, you mentioned, quote, "The Darien Building Department has begun taking notice of these illicit connections and has informed the Department of Public Works of violations for action by DPW." Could you just briefly talk about the action by DPW?
We do notify the resident or business owner, depending on where we find it. And let me say first, Pete's guys have been great. They've been picking up on a lot of these things. They know we're having issues with illicit connections here in town. So as they do come across them, they let us know. But we do notify the resident or property owner or building owner that those connections are illegal by ordinance and by state plumbing code, and we ask them to rectify those. And we have been getting some responses back, but as you well know, those are slow at coming sometimes.
Is there any financial, is there a fee, a fine, a notice? How many, I mean,
We don't have.
is there any meat to it?
We don't have
perhaps?
we don't have any teeth with the ordinance right now. So we're working on that with the sewer commission to put some heavier fines, if you will,
Okay.
to roll that out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else for Ed?
No, thank you.
Okay, no, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, registrars.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We had an election in November. Very calm election. Only 2 complaints. We had one gentleman come in and he complained, and I'm going to highlight it, about kind of aggressive behavior at the polls of some of the campaign workers. It could have been anybody. The problem is he came in 2 days after the election. It's kind of very hard to follow up on that, but Susan and I did. We issued both parties a memo on talking to their people to calm down a little bit with aggressiveness if they were involved with it. And we also sent it to the RTM, to Seth, so that he could talk to the RTM and explain it to them that we did have some complaints. So we kind of prepared for it. We had another gentleman that decided he wanted to vote at 8:10, and he came in the office, kind of yelled at each one in the office individually, and said he was going to put a secretary complaint in. But what that prompted Susan and I to do is to have our moderators issue reports on any incidents, prepare for it. We even had some witnesses that said they told him the polls were closed, but he went in anyway, and he kind of got a little aggressive. So other than that, it was okay.
I think, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I think what happened was there was very zealous representation of the Pear Tree Point Initiative.
Yes.
At all the poll sites.
Correct.
And some voters just felt that they were doing it within the zone of privacy, within the 75-foot rule. We had a gentleman come into our office who's, I think I told you at the department head meeting, they're filing a complaint with the Secretary of State's office against us. Well, it's not really against us because we didn't have anything to do with it, but he didn't know what else to do. He just didn't, he said that they were in his face.
Yeah.
And that they were speaking to him very aggressively about this initiative, and he just wanted to have a calmness when he approached the poll site and go in and do what he needed to do.
So it wasn't really a party thing.
No.
It was a special interest activist group, and so, maybe there's some, I don't know, for further discussion, because
Yeah.
I think a number of us witnessed that some of the well-meaning people were, following people to their cars to hand out materials, and
Yeah, it got a little bit too much.
And I think it was well-meaning. I mean, you want to get your interest and your point across, but maybe we can have a procedure from now on that we can follow that is a little more benign.
Okay.
Respectful, I think, of the voters in the process.
Yeah, we have to be, that's really our charge, and when they complain that they can't vote properly, like I told the gentleman, if he went inside and told the moderator, they would have come out and addressed the issue. He did not do that.
Got it.
So we're going to cover that with our moderators, just to keep an eye out, because we have a very busy year coming up, and I could just see things like that happening, coming up. The other thing I just wanted to point out, we did make some adjustments in the voting districts to even out the number of voters, and we implemented it, Susan and I implemented it, and we didn't get any complaints. So we moved some people to District 5 to District 4, and some people from District 6 to District 1. And it actually affects the RTM, because it actually puts equal numbers in each district. So that went
We have to
okay.
do that. We're supposed to do that every year.
Yeah.
So we just didn't put all that.
But we have a lot of growth in District 5 and 6, and we have to move those people out for that growth. So, but it went okay, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Good.
Any other questions?
No. Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, tax collector, Kathy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was telling Ed it's a little hot in here, but tax collections are on target for the year. Just a couple of highlights to point out. The tax payment history file has been put online, and that's the file that includes all payments that were made in calendar year 2019 that people can reference when they're preparing their federal and state income taxes. It's in the additional links section at the bottom of the basically any page on the website. It would be the second link. It says tax payment history. You click on it, you can search under list number or your last name. There's also an explanation on the news feed on how to access that information. One other thing that has happened since January 1st is DMV has extended the registration period for vehicles from 2 years to 3 years. And we do get a number of taxpayers that do not pay their taxes until they have to renew their registration. So I do expect we'll see some kind of an impact. I don't think it will be material, but we are anticipating that people will pay their motor vehicle taxes in 3 years versus 2. So I don't know if you have any questions for me.
Interesting to see the big bump in online tax payments.
Yes.
And they're paying?
Primarily ACH, so $2
You're doing
flat.
ACH?
Yes,
Okay.
primarily,
I was going to
yes.
say 3.2% on $10 million.
Yeah, and I think it's, if someone doesn't have the time to come in, they get the time, date stamped confirmation. They don't want to deal with the mail. So there's a number of reasons why people are opting to pay that way.
Okay.
It might be interesting for us to see added into your report the dollars and percentages of those different payment methods.
In terms of ACH
Yeah.
versus credit? Okay. I can do that.
Anything else for Kathy?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, town clerk. Good morning and welcome, Karen.
Morning. Thank you. And keeping in line with a long line of town clerks, I'll say I really have nothing else to add to my report. It speaks for itself.
Who put Karen up to that?
As you can see, the RTM, we are up to 99 members, which is very good. District 1 is always a little low, but only by 1, so that's not bad. The past quarter, we helped the registrars with the election, creating the absentee ballot and the ballot. And that's really pretty it, unless you have any questions on anything. You can see the month of December, for our financial intake, the month of December, which I guess you don't have the monthly breakdown, but we were much busier than we normally are. A lot more house sales than usually happens in the month of December. So that was a nice little bump up.
Was there something changing with rates or fees in January that might have prompted that, or just kind of lucky?
No, I think houses were just selling. I think the prices had come down a little bit, but we definitely saw more sales than we normally do in December. October was very quiet, and then we expect to see a bump up again in around March. But you never know.
Any other questions for Karen? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, town treasurer, Joan.
I have nothing to add either. The only, what I would say was notable is that we have made our budget for the year. But I think all the information is in the report. If there are any questions?
First off, congratulations on beating your budget. That's fantastic. I'm sure all the taxpayers appreciate that.
Thank you.
Now that you have already achieved the budget, and thanks for the detail and the breakdown of the ranges of the yields in the portfolio. Now that you've already achieved the budget, how does this work? Do you and Jen or you and Kate go back and evaluate and set like a revised target based on performance year to date, or?
The short answer is no. The money goes to the town, so it goes, it can be used to relieve mill rate, whatever the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen decide to do with it. The only evaluation is done is next year's budget, and I have used a completely new methodology this year, and I can briefly explain it to you. It's very hard to base off historics, given that these are kind of unprecedented times. So I'm treating money this year more like a commodity, and it's very closely aligned to what the government does. So I will be presenting 4 scenarios and a bunch of assumptions. I've already input my number, what I think the scenario most likely would be. I think overall we're seeing some drops in rates. I noted them in my report that even month over month, I think they're building in a Fed rate drop already. That's what I'm hearing from my bankers. That's what I'm seeing in the numbers. So that's basically, when I do my budget this year, I will go into more detail about all of those assumptions. But I think we have to find a way that works. The only thing that I would stress is that, as you know, because you were involved last year, there's a great deal of discussion about STIF and could we beat STIF. And 27% of the portfolio is ahead of STIF. If you think about this in a common sense way, other than STIF can do things that I can't do, it's a lot easier to invest 60 million, which is where we are, than 8 billion. There's a lot more flexibility and maneuvering I can do. 8 billion is a lot of money to invest, and they're less. You have to be less nimble, I think, when you have that kind of money to invest. So I'd think of it that way more than performance.
Well, it sounds like you already are, since you have looked at revising the methodology.
It's completely revised.
For the forecast, because the one thing that I heard from every constituent was, please don't raise my taxes, please don't raise my taxes. So if we underestimate where our revenue comes in, we end up setting a mill rate that's too high, right? And I'm sure that's the concern. That'll be the thing that I will try to focus on, to try to get us to get the most accurate mill rate possible to limit the impact on tax rates.
I do want to stress that when we make this money, it doesn't go into a black hole. It can be used to buy down the mill rate the next year. So it's just a short period before it can be used. And again, that's not my decision. That's the Board of Finance's decision. My job is to make the money.
Right.
So.
Thank you. Thank you for taking a look at the methodology. We'll look forward to hearing more about that during the budget season. Okay, TV 79.
Good morning.
Hi, Jim.
Thank you to this board for raising the pay for our videographers for the first time in 13 years. We are now up to $30 an hour with a 2-hour minimum per shoot. That started in December, and our spend in December was significantly higher this year than in previous years. The good news is that we applied for and received 2 separate grants from the Area 9 Cable Council for $4,500 to help pay for videographers, and that money will certainly go toward the increased pay. We also received $2,700 for technological enhancements to room 119. Happy to answer any questions if you have. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention one other thing. We are moving forward on proposing a grant to the Darien Foundation to completely renovate the record and playback system in our booth. We are using state-of-the-art 1990s technology, and the system has certainly progressed since we installed all that. We have always tried to appeal to as a Scot and the town's interest in being thrifty, but we have reached the point where that technology needs to be leapfrogged up to the future. So we're looking at a grant request in the $25,000 to $30,000 range, which will put in a computer-based server system, which will allow us to record and be immediately available for playback instead of having to go through the laborious process we do now. It will also allow us to stream 24 hours a day on the internet. That grant request, we hope, will be in the Foundation's hands and approved in time to be able to make those renovations and changes over the summer.
Do you have a timeline for that? Because it has to go to the RTM. So just keep that in mind in your timeline, that it's going to require approval of the RTM.
Thank you. I forgot about that, but I will factor that in. Okay. The advisory board has met last week and approved the recommendation of moving forward, so I'll make sure that they follow in on that as well too.
Would
they need, Kate, let me ask, would they need to get approval before we make the application? Could we do it
No,
before?
you can, before you accept the actual check.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry, a question on room 119. Is there
Yes.
a DTA on when those enhancements would be made?
We're hoping sometime this week. The problem is the room is very heavily used, and we've got to get a technician who works for us on a part-time basis and match his availability with downtime in the room and get in there. It should take just a couple hours, we think, to put in new monitors, new switcher equipment, et cetera, which we've already, bought and paid for.
Anything else for Jim?
No, thank you.
No? Okay,
No,
thank you.
thank you.
And
Thank you.
Alicia's not here this morning, so that ends our department heads meeting. We do have a, oh, hi Beth, how are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had that battery was running and then
No problem. Come on up.
good hairy hour. Sorry about that. My report stands, but I just do want to let you know that we are going to have another presentation for the census. And in March, we will be having volunteers come in to help the seniors fill out the census because it's so important that they're counted for many reasons. Also, we're starting in January, late January, with VITA, ARP, and IRS volunteers coming in to do the tax program. We started it for the first time last year. It actually picked up by the end of the time it was in there, so the volunteers are coming back in every Wednesday, so we're happy about that. And we are implementing a survey that's a program survey and a food survey. We've gotten 300 back so far, so we're doing that for the whole month of January, and we're hoping to by the next quarter I'll be able to report some things that the seniors are looking for, program additions and improvements. And satisfied customers. We hope we get some compliments too.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions for Beth?
Just a quick question. Could you just remind me again about membership, what the criteria, residents, non-residents, et cetera?
In terms of residents and non-residents, the criteria is exactly the same. At this particular point in time, there is no membership fee, and you have to be 55 and above. If there's classes that have a stipulation of attendance on them, Darien residents get first rights always. So if the class is only 25, Darien 25 residents come forward, they get first pick on all the classes.
Anything else for Beth? Okay, thank you. Thank you all. We're going to move right into our Board of Selectmen's meeting, so if you wouldn't mind just being a little bit quiet on your way out. Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
No, you can't. You all have to go back to work.
I'll run through this quick. Okay, I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order for Tuesday, January 21. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First, Selectmen's report. I don't have much to report today. I will be sending all of you final drafts of the legislative agendas from a variety of different groups, WestCog, CCM, and COST. So you can take a look. I will also like to try and get a copy of what CAVE is going to put out as far as a legislative agenda. I don't know if either one of you have access to that. So I think it would be interesting to see in the world of education what the priorities are this year. I'll be providing two sort of mini State of the Town addresses this week, one to the Human Service Planning Council and one to the Chamber of Commerce. So that's always a nice opportunity to share what's happening in town. And that's really it for me. I think we talked about many of the things that were on my mind during our department heads meeting, especially walking student safety. So I'll turn to Kate.
We are in the period of waitlist renewals for the parking permits. So if you're on the wait list, you should have gotten a letter reminding you to renew for a $10 fee. You can renew online, in person, or by mail. That deadline is the end of the month. I expect at your next meeting, we will convene the board as a parking authority because we have a couple of issues to address, including the fact that we now have to pay sales tax on the parking permits and daily fees. So we'll have a brief discussion on how you want to handle that. We've also had one issue come up regarding placement on the waiting list that I would like to have you discuss as the parking authority. So we'll be doing that in the next meeting. And you should get your budget books this weekend so that you'll have a few days to review them before I formally present the budget to you on Monday. Cutting's all been done, so the bad wing won't impair me. But we'll begin our work, and feel free to, as you get it, if you want to ask any questions as you're going along. Sometimes I find it easier if you send me your questions ahead of the meeting so that I can answer them for you. I may not always, Jen and I will be there at the meetings, we'll have the computer with all the detail behind it, but we may not anticipate every question that you're going to ask. So if you have something you really want to know and want an answer that night, email me ahead of time and we'll do our best to have the answer ready for you at the meeting.
Yeah, and I would just like to ask that all the questions that get asked individually, the answers should be provided to the entire board. Okay, thank you. So we have one item of new business today, discuss and take action on proposed fee schedules for the health department, and David is here to talk about what he's recommending.
Yes, and thank you. We were not making any changes to the overall fee structure itself. We built and did a survey of surrounding communities because just to see what other places charge, and we're at or above the standard fees that are being assessed in other communities. The one thing that we really wanted to do was to try to get another tool in our toolbox that would get facilities that need to be upgraded and fail inspections a little penalty. And what we have found is there are a few facilities that repeatedly fail inspections, especially in the first inspection, and they know how to pass inspections, so they'll pass the second inspection. Then we go back because these places are supposed to be inspected quarterly. So we have facilities that will pass, fail, pass, fail, pass, fail. And it's gotten a little frustrating with a few of these facilities. They're not bad enough to close. They're not posing that much of a risk to public health where you feel there's an imminent risk to the public. But we thought that having this is part of the board had recommended this a while ago, Advisory Board of Health, to increase, depending on the frequency of the re-inspections for those facilities that are historically problematic. So that's what I have before you today. And looking down on this list, I see here the failure to post rating. We have a proposal of $1,050 as a failure.
No, it's $100. It's $5 has a line to it.
I know.
Yeah, it wasn't quite.
So what happened?
Was it 50? Did you?
It was 50. No, we don't have a.
You don't have a fee, right?
I proposed $50 to the board, the Advisory Board of Health. They said 100. I put the extra zero in. I guess I forgot to take out the 50, or it's crossed out. But in any event,
it's supposed to be 100.
It's supposed to be 100. And other than that, I just wanted to itemize the fact that we don't charge for tick testing and submitting ticks or radon test kits when we have them. There is one other permit fee that we'd like to institute because it's a new program, and that has to do with, under the second page, water treatment, wastewater disposal systems. That's like for water softeners. There's a special disposal system that needs to be installed. They can't connect water softeners to your septic system, or really, I'm not sure how that relates to the sewer, if they can discharge water softener waste to sewers. But there's a separate system that needs to be installed for water softeners when there's a septic system involved. It involves some work on our part, so we thought we should have a fee associated with that.
Okay.
And The other was a food permit late fee. Currently, we charge $100 if the application is after 7 days. I'm pleased to report this year, we didn't have anybody that came back after that period of time. We usually have, 3 or 4 facilities that come back late, but I think that's an extra tool that we could utilize, because it does involve follow-ups on our part, calls and reminders to facilities when they don't meet that 7-day renewal requirement. And that's really the scope of changes that we're proposing.
Yep.
David, overall, you said that our fees are relatively competitive, or a little bit above what other towns are charging. When you get to the food permit fee, is that a quarterly? They have to do that every quarter?
No, that's annual. That's an annual permit renewal fee. The inspections are quarterly, and the only time we'd have a fee associated with that is if they fail more than twice or more.
No, I just wanted to make sure I
Right, yes, that's correct. It's an annual fee.
And earlier in your report during the meeting, you were saying that a lot of, is it radon tests are going out the door?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we routinely, this is a state program, we partner with the state on that, and we've been doing that for about 5 years, since they've had the ability to provide the test kits, and this year we actually got more. We asked for more test kits, not knowing, because every year the demand is different.
Yeah.
But this year, for some reason, it just seems like the residents are more interested in testing. I don't know if there's been additional publicity, but
more houses on the market?
Could be.
I haven't seen it to be related to real estate transactions, although I've often been worried that it could turn out to be a component of a real estate transaction, that we're providing free test kits for a real estate transaction, which I don't think that's our role here.
Right.
But, we can't really restrict. And my view of it is at the end of the day, it's still about public health.
So the one question I have is your proposed $100 fee for failure to post the ratings.
Yes.
We know, and David's here, and he does a great job of posting the food establishment ratings, and they're available online.
Yes.
Can you remind us if the ratings are a state mandate, or if that's something that we do, that we've taken on locally?
There's 60 health departments in Connecticut, and Darien is one of 7 in Connecticut that does ratings. So it's not a state mandate. It is something that we chose to do as a community. I know that our adjacent communities of both Stamford and Norwalk do ratings, but it is not something that is done across the state.
Okay, so without state mandate, I have a little bit of a problem charging a fee for failure to post the rating. I like them. I like to see them personally. I think by not posting a rating, you're actually sending a message maybe about your establishment. It calls into question why you wouldn't post your rating. But to impose a financial penalty for not posting when it's an optional program, I just have a little bit of a question about that.
Well, it's optional for the state, but it's not optional for us because it's in our regulations. So the fact is that our regulations include a requirement for posting.
That you have to post. Okay.
So it's in our regulation, it's not an optional thing. Here, we chose to go a little bit further in what the state has as its minimum requirements. We also, as David does such a great job, as you said, of posting, we also post not only the ratings, but the complete inspection report on our website.
Yep.
And that, I think, is unique also to our community.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, my feeling on it is that people who, most people who get the A's put them up. You're right. And so those who maybe get a B, certainly a C, we have to remind them to put it up. Now, everybody has an ability, if they don't feel that the rating either represents conditions in the facility, it was unfair, or that they really don't want to carry that rating for any period of time, they can appeal that. there's an appeal process, and that includes telling us what they did to address the deficiencies that were in the establishment that resulted in that rating or that inspection report, what they did to address those. And there's a fee that's associated, that's a reinspection fee they can pay, and we'll go back in and reinspect, issue a new rating based on the new conditions. So there is there is that mechanism that we've established for, if they get a rating that they're not happy with, they can address it.
So I don't have your regulations in front of me. When you establish a rating for a food service place, how long before the establishment is required to post that rating that you've given? And what I'm getting at is, if somebody gets a rating they're unhappy with, do they have a time period under which to appeal that, to cure that, before it gets posted, or before you would impose this failure to post fee?
The rating, we use a field inspection software. And the field inspection software, as soon as the inspection is complete and they hit the submit button, it comes to me and it goes to the website. It's instantaneous. So at this point, we do not have a delay mechanism built in for allowing for an appeal process.
Okay. Generally I'll use some casual language here. I worry about we want to be supportive of our small businesses. You do a great job with your staff in walking places through remediation when they have failures and they need to get into compliance. But I'm trying to avoid sort of the scarlet letter feeling here that, you failed and we're going to put a big poster up front before they've really had a chance to make it right, I think is what I'm trying to say.
So a delay process for a lower rating is what you maybe would be advocating? Is that the thought?
I have to think it through. It just comes to mind that I have a couple of challenges with imposing a fee on a failure to post your rating, because I need to understand the timing of the rating systems, an appeal process, a cure process.
Well, it came about actually because the facilities that generated that concept, we go into those places more than just the inspections, because they're generally those types of facilities that need to be kind of helped along. So it's not just the official inspections. They become real kind of time suckers in a sense. So what we were trying to do there by doing this is two things. One is to try to recover the cost of our time for being in places probably more frequently than we think we should. And secondly, to have it be an incentive for people not to go have that repetitive problem, because they tend to be the same places and it tends to occur on a fairly regular basis. And that's really the reason for it, is to kind of target some places. And I totally agree with being a proponent of supporting local owned and just business in general. It's what keeps us being able to get paid. Yep. So I totally get that. But the thing is that I also understand and look at the fact is that, we do have some places that cause us to spend, I think, inordinate amounts of time in.
But aren't you getting at that in your reinspection fee? It seems to me that you very well captured that.
The reinspection fee at half, yeah, but it's the issue is the reinspection fee, if it's once a year, fine. It's half the annual permit fee.
Right.
But if they fail 3 times a year, 4 times a year, it would stay the same. In other words, if they fail 4 times a year, it's still half the inspection fee.
No, I'm supportive of your sliding scale of reinspection fee. Okay. So in my mind, what you're trying to get at on the failure to post fee, you're really capturing here. You want people to. You never really want to go back and have to reinspect someone. You want them to all pass the first time. So I really think that if we change the reinspection fee scale, I'm not sure we need the failure to post. just my own. And I'd love to hear my board's comments about it.
Well, could you clarify as to the timing? I'm still a little confused as to when, as you propose it, when that $100 would be imposed? And how you, like...
So if you were to go walk down Post Road and you go by one of the restaurants and there's a rating in the window, and then you go into a place that may not have one in the window, and you go into the facility and you don't see the rating anywhere, that would be the place that if they can't produce a rating to us when we do our inspection, they can't show us where it is in a visible place. Now, we say by the window, but some places will put it inside somewhere near the cash register or something and say that's publicly viewable. So it's on the time for our inspection. So it would be, we would assess it when we're doing our inspection.
So they would know when, they know when you're coming in?
No.
Okay, so you have a surprise inspection.
Yes.
And what about those people who are appealing? So how do they know? They just have to have it done before your next surprise visit?
In 11 years of being here, we've not had a single appeal.
So why isn't a failure to post the rating another box that you check on your inspection report that gets added to the other criteria for a pass or fail or a grade?
We use a state form, and that's simply not on the state form. Now, could we add that as a criteria in our regulation as being, but the enforcement of that is still where it becomes problematic. If it's on our form, how do we enforce it? If it's not a fee, that's why I thought the fee would be the way to enforce it. So I mean, I could send them a letter saying you didn't post it, so what? You know, if there's no fee associated with that, there's no incentive for them to post it. I can't change the score. There's a numerical score that comes along with doing our inspections under the form system that we currently have. I can't change that because that's a state form and there's no place for ratings because, again, it's not a state-sanctioned activity. It's ours. So I'm not sure how we would roll that in, as you say, into the actual inspection itself. We do take notes of it. I think that sometimes Dave gets those results that it says, you know, rating not posted. You know, but it's just a rating not posted. Yes.
Question, of the 7 health departments that do have the ratings, are all of those departments, I mean, all of the establishments required to post the ratings also?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that it's again, you know, we're actually in a situation here where because we also have an online presence with that, the information gets out to the public maybe better than in some other locations. Not everybody has that capability. But yeah, that's the whole point of doing it, is sort of like to let the public know.
So, I don't know, I have a lot of thoughts on this, and we can continue this conversation later so we can address this today. But, you know, maybe we need to go to a posting that's a QR code so that anybody who wants access to the most recent inspection report can use their phone and use the QR code, and that way you're not, you know, it's kind of arcane to post letters. There's a time delay, I would say, in posting those letters, or in what you're proposing here, problematic in that some people don't post them. But if we give people immediate access to the database from that location, it might be another way to skin the cat, if you will.
The ratings that we issue all have QR codes on them. That link to our website.
Okay.
So we do that currently.
So do you provide them with like a piece of paper that says A-rated, or
Yes.
do they? You do. And they're supposed to post
it's part
that.
of it's the inspection report.
Yep.
They receive a copy of the inspection report, and we issue a rating at that time that
And
they're
that's
supposed to put up.
And they're
at
supposed to
that
put up
time.
with that what you've given them.
Right. And
As soon as
our
it's
process would be to take down the previous rating and take it with us so that they're not leaving up something that was a quarter ago
Yep.
or
Very
a
smart.
year ago.
Yep.
Which we found was happening.
You can color code them. Every year is a different color of the letter.
Could.
So you take down the old one, and they're responsible for putting up the new one,
Yes.
or you
Yeah.
put up the new one?
Well, you know, I don't feel that it's our role to put something up like that. You know, I don't know, and it's kind of, you know, I don't know, a piece of Scotch tape, or,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I happen to agree with you, but I also, I think it's hard to say that, but to then say that you're going to fine them for not posting. Anyway, I've taken up too much time.
Well, one of the things that we
conversation.
could do is to say, you know, we could require that it be posted within 5 days. You know, so if they don't post in most recent rating within, say, 5 days, then they're subject to a fine, because that gives time for an appeal, and that could be something that we could look at doing.
Yeah, I'd really like to tie it to their cure period, you know, give them a chance to get better, you know, to fix their problems.
I think that would be a really reasonable tool for us to use as well, to say, okay, you know, you have to post this, but you have a 5-day window or a 7-day window, whatever you want to select in order to, if you want to appeal, you have the time to appeal. And I think that's a fair approach.
What's the average time from an inspection that someone fails to when you go back to re-inspect? Is there an average amount of time?
No, because depending on the severity, it could be the same day.
Okay.
You know, I mean, depending on what we find, it
Yep.
could be, you know, an immediate correction, could be tomorrow.
Okay.
So it really depends.
So a 1-week waiting period might be sufficient to capture most of the issues?
I think it would.
Okay.
And I think it also provides the flexibility that I think you're looking for to the establishments that, okay, you know, either one or two things. Either they're going to post it, or they're going to have a request for a reinspection.
Correct.
I think that's a fair approach.
Okay. So, are there any other questions or comments on what David is proposing here with fee changes? Yeah.
I do have another question, still on the reinspection fee. Was your intent to also apply that to your beauty salon, nail salon, and barber shop?
Yes.
Okay, because it didn't state it under that in your documentation, but I wanted to
Thank you
clarify.
for pointing that out.
Okay, so,
Yes.
perfect.
And that really hasn't been an issue for us to the extent that food service has been. But, you know, I'm just putting it out there to be kind of having the level-handed approach to facilities that we inspect.
That's what I would think, that it should be applied to them also.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay. If there are no further questions, then I'd like to propose, well, we have a motion here, but I would like to propose an amendment to the Health Department fee schedule, that the failure to post rating is only applied after the establishment has been given a 1-week cure period, or what's the right word to use, David?
Well, I would just say that
Just
the
give them
fee
a 1
wouldn't be enforced for a week.
A 1-week period.
1 week grace
Okay.
period for that fee.
Okay. Okay, may I have a motion to approve my suggested amendment?
So moved.
Okay, Kip moves, seconded by Sarah. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye? Okay. Just a point of order, that the Advisory Board of Health didn't have an opportunity to weigh in on my proposal. Is that okay? That they're just advisory, so as long as you don't object to what we're amending.
No, I think it's fair. I think it's fair, and I would recommend to the Advisory Board of Health that we take this approach.
Okay, perfect. All right. So with the amendment then, and waiving the reading of the resolution, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution to amend the Darien Public Health Department fee schedule. Sarah moves. I have a second. Kip seconds. All those in favor? Great. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Yep.
I'm sorry, lastly, is there a way that, I see this is going to affect February 1st, is there a way that we're notifying these establishments of, just so they all know?
We will notify them, but we also put in our permit renewal application form letters that went out in November, that we were coming to the Board of Selectmen to request this. We also put it in our permit, we send a letter with permit renewals, which we just are finishing now. that will also inform them, but we will now say it's been passed by the Board of Selectmen, so we will contact those facilities, yes.
So, and what about the ones, when you say those facilities, you mean everybody whom you
Yes.
inspect?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not everybody gets rating, so there's 4 classes of facilities, so class 1s and 2s, gas stations and places like that, they don't get rated.
Right.
But for all the places that get ratings,
3
or
and
that
up.
this applies to, and none of those places have the issues with the re-inspections either, so, but I think we're going to send the same letter to everyone, just so that nobody can say,
Yeah, I just want to
"You
make sure
didn't
it's
tell
not.
us."
Yeah,
It's only
Same with the
2
salons.
weeks, yeah.
Same with the salons.
that's great. And I know that we'll have good coverage from the Darien-ite.
Yes.
All right.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
David.
Thank
Sorry
you.
it took so long. Okay, we have minutes, January 6th, the regular meeting.
Okay, I have a quick question for you.
Yep.
From somebody who was present. The regular meeting minutes say that you call the regular meeting to order at 7:16. The special meeting minutes say that you adjourn to open session at 7:20. So,
We might want to shift that.
Well, I think we probably rounded up on that one.
on
so-
the special meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, so when it comes to the special meeting, you'll want to make that amendment.
Perfect. 7:16, yeah. Okay, great. All right, any corrections or additions to the January 6th regular meeting?
No correction, just make a request that when we're referencing people, in this case, Mr. Pascal, just to give some color as to who this individual is.
Yes, okay.
It just helps when someone's reading.
Yep.
That they, whether it's put in the attendance up there or in the body of the presentation.
Yeah, I took it out of the attendance because typically we don't list all the guests, but that is, you're right. It's appropriate to put it into that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe he's the Darien Historical Society Board Chair.
Board chair.
Yeah. Any other corrections or additions, clarifications? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Kip moves, may I have a second? Sarah seconds. All those in favor? Great, thank you. And then we have special meeting minutes of January 6th. I'd like to amend the time of returning to open session to reflect 7:16 PM. If there are no further corrections, then I'll entertain a motion to approve as amended. Sarah, may I have a second? Kip? All those in favor? Great, thank you. Okay, no public here today. Agenda review. Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Sarah moves, may I have a second? Krista seconds. All those in favor? Thank you.